in Scientology. And my main duty as a finance person was to police the finance lines, as they say. There are policies that L. Ron Hubbard wrote that say things like free service equals free fall. It was absolutely forbidden to give even unauthorized discounts in Scientology. Okay.
So much for charity then, huh?
No. Oh, and Hubbard even wrote in one policy letter about the higher up they can raise statistics, the more they charge. You know, you always charge heavily for any result and so forth. It's sickening. I could quote policies all day long about finance because that's my main experience.
Mm-hmm.
Written quite extensive online over the years, not so much recently until lately, but I was very active on the news group Alt Religion Scientology for a number of years. And I have a website, Warrior, WARRIOR .xenu, XENU .ca, as in Canada, CA is the warrior.xenu.ca. So you can read some of the things I've written there. I've gotten very interested again recently, kind of because I wanted to share some of the documents that I have. I feel like they are the best way to show what Scientology is really all about. That leads me into another thing that Nancy mentioned about children. That was one of my big undoings in the Sea Org, that the conditions were horrible. And to try to do something about it, I had volunteered to be the parent liaison committee representative at my organization to try to improve conditions, which was a thankless and impossible task because no one really was interested in putting qualified people in care of, the children. And I have an issue that would just blow everybody's mind because it is Scientology admitting crimes that were going on, like stealing and setting fires and sexual activity.
And you've got documents showing this?
I do, in their own words. And things like the commanding officer, Bob Roppy, chaining a cadet to an electrical outlet and almost electrocuting him to death. And, Scientology had an ally on the inside of the health department. There's an issue that they admit that the raid that was imminent was averted because they were able to put on a great show and pull staff over to create the appearance that they had a legal number of staff taking care of the children, get the place cleaned up, take, the sickies away. But there was someone on the inside who tipped them off that a raid was about to happen. I have a document that admits that. It's called AIDS Order 203-71.
That is just Nancy, is this something that you have seen quite a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen all of the issues. I've seen the issues that would have been AIDS orders, the same that Mark's talking about, written by Hubbard himself with regards to child care. The abuse of the children was well known and therefore well documented.
Yeah. Deborah, this is Claire. Just to add to that, another thing that is horrifically covered up in Scientology is sexual abuse of children. My own personal experience with that was when I was 6. I was playing with a friend of mine at St. Hill, which is the property in England, and there was a male staff member in his 30s or 40s, and he was constantly trying to tell us, come to my office, come play in my office. Well, as it happened, by complete chance, I didn't want to go. So the friend that I was playing with went, and sure enough, he abused her. It was never reported to the authorities. He was sent to the RPF, and it was completely covered up.
Wow. And when there's one story like that, we all know that's going on with the Catholic Church right now, there are many stories that take place like that. Is just sick. sick.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I know. I mean, I know. I know personally other people who were sexually abused in Scientology as teenagers or children, and I've heard of others. You know, it's rampant, and the problem is that when you're raised in Scientology, you're indoctrinated and brainwashed. Absolutely, the worst thing you would ever do is call the authorities. You know, in our lawsuits, in our deposition, I was asked on numerous occasions, why didn't you call 911? Well, to answer that question, you have to understand that you're under the complete authority and control of Scientology people, security, and everything else, and it's simply not a matter of picking up a phone and calling 911. That's just not an option, unfortunately, and that's why it has to be exposed.
Oh, man.
I want to second that with Claire. I once mentioned that on some interview where somebody was talking about the calling of the 911, and I went back and did a survey of just people that I know that used to go to Clearwater, Florida, the mecca of Scientology, and live in the hotel in a closed environment where the phone's in the room. You cannot call 911. You get to the operator. But people have cell phones now, and I asked them, when you were there, if someone fell, I mean, we're not talking about a major death or something like that, but somebody, say they fell from the landing and they were, like, bloody, would you call 911? 100%. Absolutely not. What would you do?
Yeah.
I'd go run and get the security guard. Period.
So much
Yeah,
for Tom Cruise's story about stopping along the highway to aid people then, huh?
Well, think about it a little bit further. Did he call 911?
Exactly.
Right.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Well, this is Claire, and just to add to that, when I was working at the Hemet base in California, the INT base, I mean, it's called by multiple names, but I had a very severe motorcycle accident in July of '99, and I broke my left leg, both bones clean through a few inches above my ankle. They didn't call 911. They didn't call an ambulance. Security put a splint on my leg, and then they bustled me into a little red Honda and drove me to the Hemet Hospital. And I will never forget how absolutely livid the emergency room personnel were when I arrived. I was in shock. The impact broke my shoulder. They were absolutely crazy mad. Like, why didn't you guys call 911? Well, obviously, the last thing I could do at that point was openly say, well, they couldn't call 911 because David Miscavige was on the property, and that's forbidden. But that is the truth. And, you know, the medical records show that, and then as a result of their actions, they spent 3 hours doing tests to see if I was going to lose my foot. They wouldn't even tell me I'd be able to walk again.
My God. Well, we're running short on time here. We've got 15 minutes that's pre-recorded with Sharon Stanforth. Every single one of you, I want to thank you all so much for joining, because I know it's sort of traumatic, actually, to talk about these stories. And so what I want to do before we play Sharon's little piece here, Satay, you said you had something to say, and everybody please give a round of applause to Satay. She's the one.
Yay, Satay.
Yes. Thank you.
We love you, Satay.
Oh, I love you too.
Thank you all, ladies, for joining. I'm going to put you all on hold now and let her say her piece, and then Satay, when you hear the music, I'll be putting you on hold too.
All right.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. A few things I wanted to let people know. There are websites out there, and there are fabulous books out there. Some things have already been mentioned. I wanted to mention ESMB. That's for ex-Scientologists. It has a ton of wonderful information for people thinking of leaving. There's DNU.net that is so loaded with documents. A lot of Warriors' documents are on there, testimonials, affidavits, court cases. Paulette Cooper, an awesome and one of the bravest people on Earth, she wrote the Scandal of Scientology about how she was harassed and hounded and how they tried to destroy her for all those years. Bent Corrigan wrote Messiah or Madman, another fabulous book. John Atack wrote Piece of Blue Sky. These are older books, but it talks about all the stuff that was going on, and then it came from the top down. L. Ron Hubbard started all this stuff. I also just wanted to make a super quick comment. There's a woman.
The thing that really struck me was with your story that you were like the youngest on the Sea Org. You were 10 years old when you were in Sea Org, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I wasn't the youngest one on the boat. I was the youngest messenger for L. Ron Hubbard, but I certainly wasn't the youngest one on the ship. There was lots of children much younger than me.
What is a messenger?
A messenger was something L. Ron Hubbard devised to run errands around the ship. You fetch and carry, bring people back to him from wherever. If he wanted to relay orders, you took messages, you dispatches to various people. It was a way of. It was quite a big boat. And it was a way of getting messages run efficiently around the ship, really.
Didn't you also wait on LRH hand and foot and sit for hours and hours to wait for any kind of a request or command from him?
Yes, I did. I sat out or stood, depending on where I was on the ship, outside of either his office or various other places on the ship for hours on end, waiting for a command, yeah.
A command from on high. Oh, what was he? A few people have actually met him. That at least that I've talked with. What was he like? I mean, were you kind of scared of him because you were young and he was in this position of high authority, or did he treat kids well? What was your sense of what kind of man he was?
No, he didn't treat kids well, and when I first met him at St. Hill, he seemed like this very big, billowy man that kind of got people's attention, but having been on the ship with him for a while, I found him not to be... He was like that to many of his followers, but most of us kids were pretty frightened of him, and when he said jump, you jumped.
How were you treated as a child in that? I mean, you're 10 years old, living on this boat. Did they feed you adequately and give you a good place to sleep, or what was that like?
I had probably one of the better berths because I was a Commodore's messenger, and I shared it with Janice Gillam. And so we had a little cabin to ourselves, which was, pretty good compared to... I went down in the dorms. They were appalling. They really were. I was lucky to have that accommodation. As for being fed adequately, no, I don't think so. And when you're put in a condition like I was and Janice in liability, and we were put down in the hold of the ship, you certainly aren't fed correctly. You're lucky to be fed at all, and you are made to work in very harsh, extreme conditions. And
can you paint a picture of what the hold was like?
The hold was dark and gloomy. There was just one little lamp there, and we had to clean this hold. We had to chip rust off the side of the ship. That night, we'll go back to our cabin, this will be over. But no, it wasn't. We had to sleep down there, and we weren't given anything to sleep with. There was nothing to lay down on, just a cold floor, and no blankets, no nothing. And we sat up because there wasn't even sufficient room in the part we were in to really lie down, so we sat up just next to each other for warmth.
I would have been afraid of rats and stuff, too.
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
I was on the ship for approximately 18 months, and I